Welcome to my fireside chats. Today I'm discussing the presentation in 2019 that I made to the APA with Dorsey Pruter regarding the single case ABA high road data. I described how it kind of began in the Netherlands when she had to fly out to join me in the Netherlands, so only had a 2-day window to recover the child. So she modified and adapted the high road protocol to be a 2-day workshop and got a full recovery in the child in 2 days. And so you can look at the data there. That's Dorsey Pruter's the B phase, and it speaks for itself. And then I am we were over in the Netherlands, she asked me to be the follow-up therapist, and I agreed. It's the only time that she and I have worked together on this in that way. And so I became the follow-up therapist. So that second A phase and all those little numbers and stuff are my therapy that I can talk about. Really interesting at another time. Basically, you look at how the blue line and the gold line are not synchronous coming in, that the blue line is affection, the gold line is cooperation, the silver line is social involvement. Affection, blue, are the attachment networks. The gold, the cooperation, are the emotional regulation networks. And the silver, social involvement, is mood and arousal. So we're actually looking at brain systems there. And the emotional regulation network should be entrained. That's what it's called. They should be entrained with or synchronizing with the attachment networks. So attachment should be entrained with emotional regulation, and the emotional regulation should be following attachment. So the attachment should be higher and emotional regulations underneath. But you look at it coming in there. So the period we're in the Netherlands is that 1 and 2 flatline period. Then I show up. I first like introductory session is the round 4, and then my first active session is 5. My second active session is 11. So when you see those spikes in the mood and arousal, that's when my sessions occurred. And you can see after 5, you can see at 6 what I call a consolidation V. Actually, after 5, you'll see a rise on the blue line. It was down there. It was about 3, I think. And then after my session, it goes to 4 the next day. It goes to 5 the next day, which is what I wanted. I intervened on the attachment networks. So it went to 4 and then went to 5. His emotional regulation skyrockets after my session. He went from being like 3 on cooperation to a 7 on cooperation. He was so cooperative with his mom after my session. He was happy and his affection's going up. He was a happy camper after that first session. But then look what happens after a couple of days of just being on this emotional high. He's kind of exhausted. It's been kind of whew. And so you get what I call a consolidation V. His brain networks are consolidating the gains they've made and reorganizing and re-regulating their set point is how I would describe it. So it comes down to a consolidation V. All 3 drop. Mood and arousal drops, affection drops, and the cooperation drops. Cooperation takes a big drop, but it's still normal range. It didn't drop to 1 and 2s. It just went to normal range. But look, the cooperation, the gold line, dropped below attachment, which is where it's supposed to be. So boom, he drops down. Beautiful consolidation V. That's about as good as it gets. And then look what happens at 7. Oh, that is a beautiful, beautiful integration point. All 3 networks on a point, total integration of all 3 networks. That's exactly what we want to see in the data from the therapy that I do, which is neurological therapy in your brain systems, your head. Nobody else does this on the planet. Nobody else does therapy that continues to have effect across days. I do because I know what I'm doing. So I got this beautiful, and then we get this integration point at 7. Then look what happens. Where'd the blue line go? We see out of 7, we see gold and we see silver. Where's the blue line? Keep following the gold line. You'll see the blue line emerge at 10. There was perfect, perfect entrainment of the attachment networks and the emotional regulation networks after that integration point. That's good work. And it's amazing the data is showing this level of sensitivity. That's a good outcome measure. So after the 7 integration point, perfectly entrained attachment and cooperation networks until 10, which is my next session. So I was actually my next session that got them off the entrainment. I did a correlation on the uh, ratings for the gold and the blue line for the first half up until I think 6, and the second half after that. And it was like going from like a correlation of 0.2 or something in the first half to a correlation of like 9 something in the second half. You can see it's a perfect correlation on through 8 to 12. And that's a result of my therapy. And it's because I wanted to do that. That's I think that should be the most impressive thing to you, is that this wasn't a random thing I did. I wanted to get the 2 systems entrained, and I wanted affection to be higher than cooperation. So first session I did something, and I got that. What did I do? You'll never figure it out in 100 years. You're not even close to figuring it out. You're not even close to figuring out how for anything. So that's just the second A is just amazing therapy work that'll have you guys puzzled for the next 250 years, is about how I accomplished what I did. Nobody's going to be able to replicate it. But that's not what we're talking about. Again, we're not talking about the amazing therapy of Dr. Childress. We're talking about the ultimately amazing recovery of the high road workshop in Miss Pruter, the B phase. That is phenomenal. So once I got the 2 sessions in and I got stable data that showed that I'm messing with their brain networks, and they're still staying solid. They didn't collapse back down into the hostility and the 1s and 2s again. Dorsey Pruter and the High Road Workshop got a full and complete and stable recovery of the child's attachment bond to his mother, a 15-year-old adolescent male, after 3 years of documented child abuse by 3 different mental health people. If that doesn't prove the High Road Workshop effectively recovers children from child abuse, then there will be no proof that would be acceptable to people. This is the proof. The only knock on it is this just for the one child, or is this true for other children as well? What you do for single case data is you replicate it. Dorsey Pruter has data on all her workshops, and which show that same thing. Every single workshop gets the same recovery, except our other workshops are 4 days because she does 2 days of stabilization at the end. She mentioned to me, though, early on, that typically the recovery does happen about the second day. Second or third day, she gets a recovery. And then the following 2 days are basically stabilizing the child and family and preparing for their post-workshop world of new relationships. So once I shut this down and got this, then I knew I had really clean data. Now, Dorsey was kind of aware that this was kind of in the potential AB research thing, if I'm keeping the data on it after the fact, but I didn't really disclose to her exactly what the research protocol was, so she didn't quite know when what the phases were. She was just doing what she's doing, recovering the children and staying involved and doing what she does. So once I shut it down and said, "Oh no, you were the B phase. You were the intervention. So there's no intervention. B phase is intervention. Second A is no intervention again, and we don't need the second B because the recovery was stable. The child never relapsed. So it becomes an ABA instead of ABAB single case design." Now, the moment I get this data, I realize I have something amazing here, that this could actually help so many people. If we look to publish this, peer review publish it, it's going to take quite a while to get published, and it may just die away in the archives of stuff. And this is the type of information that needs to be out there quickly. So I emailed Dorsey a couple of emails basically saying that I don't want to look for publication of this data because I don't want to wait, because I believe it has um, value, not only value, but value in stopping child abuse. Okay, so this is recovery from child abuse, and that's kind of important. So I don't want the delay. So I propose that we instead present it mainline to the National Convention of the American Psychological Association. So, Dorsey's an agreeable sort, and so fine, we'll present to the APA. So I submitted to Division 24 of the APA. That's theoretical and philosophical psychology, I think, because this is in that domain. She's got a workshop that not only recovers children from this type of psychological child abuse, but I know the protocol. I've seen what she does and how she does it. And I think that type of approach, the psychoeducational workshop, multimedia type of approach that she's using, could be adapted to other trauma related pathologies. Specifically, I think recidivism in prisoners. I think if Dorsey could get a grant or help researchers develop a high road version workshop for prisoners on discharge, kind of something. I think she could substantially reduce prison recidivism. And I think the other domain is substance abusers. I think an adapted high road workshop approach could potentially be very helpful with substance abusers. And because it's not a psychotherapy approach, it's a psychoeducational. And oh my goodness, there's no therapy on the planet that can get a recovery like that in 2 days. Not a chance. Not a chance. Any therapy is going to achieve that. So it's obvious she's not doing any form of psychotherapy. Look at that recovery she's getting. It's in the data. There it is. Argue with the data. There it is. Reality is what reality is. It's like Lazarus rising from the grave. This kid just came back to life. And I saw him for the recovery period. He was clean of trauma. He was fine. He's a great guy, as a matter of fact. He's a sweetie. He's a really good person. His mom was a little anxious. She was like a little scared that he was going to return to being the mean guy he was. But no, he was a good guy. And so he and I kind of helped his mom adjust and say, no, this is actually something that you can rely on here. This was a good recovery. And so that's where the idea for the presentation to the APA comes from. That's why I went to Division 24. Now I got to title the article, and I entitled it, I think, Empathy, the Family, and the Core of Social Justice. Now, probably a more accurate title would be Recovery of Children from Child Abuse or something. But I figured that was a little prerogative on my part that I got to name the article. So I'm named it for a double bounce. That's what I call them. It's when an arc on something lands on the first bounce, but then continues and bounces again on something. And so I call those double bounces. Boom, boom. And the double bounce for this is going to be over into social justice. That was the line that kind of got opened in the Netherlands over at The Hague, is the social justice line. So as long as that line's coming, and we're going to bounce into social justice and the importance of empathy and the whole thing about family and what does it mean to be a family internationally. And so that whole kind of domain, I took the opportunity just to name the article on a double bounce instead of specifically to this. But interestingly enough, somehow we're presenting to Division 24 on empathy, the family, and the core of social justice. And somehow a campaign of denigration and slander got against us, got mounted to where all these people are contacting the APA, wanting them to rescind their invitation to Dr. Childress and Dorsey Pruter to present on empathy, the family, and the core of social justice. And so I've got the emails from the APA folks saying, "What's going on, Dr. Childress? Why are all these people protesting against you presenting at the APA?" And I explained I'm involved in family courts, and I asked them to hold on to those records. Please hold on to them, um, because that's documentation of the harassment over here. And they said, "Yeah, you'll need a subpoena to get them, but we will hold on to them." And I've got all the email exchanges. And they said, "Well, we believe in academic freedom, so we're not going to rescind your invitation simply because people are protesting and you're controversial about something. But what we want to do, to kind of satisfy those people who are complaining, is we want to peer review your paper before it's presented." So the president of Division 24 peer reviewed this paper from Childress and Pruter. So thank you, monkeys. This is actually peer reviewed data, okay, presented to the American Psychological Association, like mainstream right into the artery. We presented the data peer reviewed into the APA, this data. Um, and there was positive comments from the peer review, and she was there at the talk, and she got up and spoke afterwards. Nothing but positive comments. So yeah, I passed peer review just fine. The question becomes, who were these vague people who mounted the opposition? I'm going to suggest that, coming off of the AFCC presentation, that this was another example of harassment, potentially by Jean Mercer. I can't prove it because I don't have the emails, but the APA has those emails, and this is her style, and there's nobody else that would want to do this kind of stuff. And so that again shows up, something unsavory about the nature of the pathology over here, that these random people who are not involved in anything, they're not litigants, they're not mental health people, they're just random people, glom on to this pathology in the family courts, and euphemistically we call them flying monkeys, Urban Dictionary, kind of the Wizard of Oz things, that they are, just harassing the mental health people who try to work with these families, slander them, and they work between trials and between events to try to damage the credibility of the professionals over here, unjustly, because they're trying to prevent this data. They're trying to prevent anybody from knowing that the High Road Workshop effectively recovers children from complex trauma. How evil is that? When you have Dorsey Pruter can absolutely recover these children from 3 years of documented child abuse, and they're trying to prevent people from knowing about that. They're on the side of the child abusers. They're trying to make the child abuse continue. And if it's Jean Mercer on this, I don't know that it is, but if it is, that speaks to something. She thinks she's out there protecting children from no, she's like interfering, if that's what she's doing. And I say that because that's what she did at the AFCC. But somebody's out there trying to get this stopped, and made it get peer reviewed. They also added a discussion section after our talk. So I had an hour that I had to go to this room and discuss with anybody, the controversy around this. Nobody showed up because that wasn't the point. The point was to prevent the talk, not to actually engage with the data or information. So that's the talk. That's our presentation to the APA, of this fabulous data, single case ABA data, that absolutely proves the High Road Workshop is effective in recovering children from complex trauma and child abuse in a matter of days. And that actually absolutely showcases just how amazingly um, intricate my therapy is. That my therapy will ripple across days in the neurological networks of the child, fixing things in the neurological networks. So just one, interestingly, on the first session, I did something good. Okay, I gave the child, I did something that would facilitate the attachment bonding and get the systems entrained and get attachment above. Did some. So that whole thing of 5, 6, 7 and the entrainment, that was intentional. I did that on purpose. And oh, good, it worked. And then at 11, though, I did something different. At the second session, I gave the kids something to think about. Now, I didn't give it overtly. I kind of wove it into the session, but I gave him something to like a hard little thing to think about, and that kind of stressed him out. And you can see what happened off of that. His arousal goes up. His first time his arousal goes up and his affection's going up. That means he's happy. The second time his arousal goes up, but his affection goes down and his cooperation goes down. He was an unhappy camper. So after my second session, I gave him something to think about, and he didn't like what I gave him to think about. But look what happens. So at 10, he's having struggling with it, but he figured it out. Boom, he pops back up, and look at that pop back up, that integration point. So he goes into a consolidation V, and then boom, he's back up into that integration point. This time it's only a 2-point integration because he was just too happy in my mind. He was too social, too aroused. He was just so happy that he figured out what the issue was, or the problem was. And so his affection just rockets up, his cooperation just rockets up, and his mood and arousal stayed spiking at the top because he was a happy camper. But look how tough it was. It took 2 days then for him to recover. He drops back down into the second consolidation V. And look at that. He spent 2 days in that consolidation V. He was tired. Poor little guy. I gave him something to work through. But he was a happy camper when he figured it out. And you can see that in my data. Holy cow. So that's pretty amazing. You guys will never in a million years figure out what I do or how I do it. I'm the only one on the planet that can do this sort of stuff. So look, be amazed, try to figure it out. And first you'll look at the data and you go, that's not possible. He can't possibly do this stuff in the brain networks across days and predict it and plan it and actually do it on purpose. And yeah, I can. So there's the data. So it's like you're going to have to figure it out. So with that, that's my talk on the presentation of Dorsey Pruter and Dr. Childress to the APA in 2019. High Road, for a fact, will successfully recover kids from years of child abuse and complex trauma in a matter of days. You want the data, there's the data. So with that, I'm going to finish off this particular adventure of Dr. Childress in the wonderland of the family courts. This keeps getting curiouser and curiouser over here. All right.